Okay, so today we have Jacob here from AccuRx. Thank you so much for being on your second podcast?
My second ever podcast. No, thank you for coming.
Would you be able to give us an overview of what AccuRx is building right now and the impact you aspire to have with your new product?
Yeah, absolutely. So we think healthcare is a communication industry. It wasn't 50 years ago, it was a knowledge industry because basically you went to a doctor and they would see you, treat you, prescribe, diagnose, they do everything.
Yeah.
Healthcare was very much a knowledge industry. Then fast forward 50 years, it's got a lot more complex. It's now a communication industry. If you go and talk to people on the front line about what they did today, it's made a referral, got a second opinion, got information to a patient. So that's where the value is added in healthcare communication. And our vision is that everyone who's involved in a patient's care can communicate with everyone else involved in that patient's care, regardless of what organisation they work for, and obviously that also includes the patient being part of their care. So that's our vision. In terms of our product, our core product today is used by GP practices around the country to message their patients. That's grown organically, basically, over the last 2 years, really rapidly. Where we're doing a lot of work now is in moving into hospitals and starting to join up different parts of the healthcare system.
In terms of like patient outcomes, like do you think like the technology like yours can increase the quality of diagnosis or kind of cut down on misdiagnoses when it comes to patients?
So I'd definitely like to hope so. I think one decision we've made is we haven't focused on very specific use cases. We haven't built a product for a pathway for patients with diabetes or for patients adhering to medication where they've got this disease. We've tried to give frontline staff a suite of tools, of products that they can innovate in how they use. So the example I always compare to is something like Microsoft Excel, people using like 101 different ways for all sorts of different outcomes, but they're able to innovate. We get amazing feedback from practices in terms of increasing their uptake of screening programs, in terms of making sure that patients who are on a medication who need certain blood tests get those blood tests. But I think a lot of it is also benefits in patient experience. So not being told, oh, if your test results are normal, you won't hear from us. Kind of no news is good news, but actually like having good communication. And then one of the areas we've learned a huge amount over the last year is actually where we can have a huge amount of impact is by making life easier for staff, and that actually lets them improve patient outcomes because they got more time and they're less stressed and they can spend time in an appointment focusing on the right things. So that's been really rewarding over the past year or so.
What was like, I mean, we spoke previously and you said that, you went for a big pivot, which we'll go into later, but what was like the insight or the kind of cue that kind of made you build out this product? Was there a ground truth that you figured out as you were testing?
So unfortunately not. There was no light bulb moment.
There's no light bulb moment.
We initially started out building a product for antibiotic prescribing. And that's when Lawrence and I met on Entrepreneur First. That's what we started doing. And part of that product was sending information to a patient. So at the end of a pathway, you'd go through a bunch of questions, get information around whether a patient needs a prescription or not. If so, which prescription? And you could send advice to the patient. When we tested that, and GPs would use it, and they'd click send advice, and it would go into their IT system, their clinical record system, and go through to the patient's phone at the same time, they thought it was like witchcraft. It was like this wow moment where they're like, what, you can do this in 2016? So that was, I'd say, the first seed where there was like, okay, there's definitely a problem to solve here. Practices, you'd look at what they would do to get messages to patients, and it'd be like dictate a letter, give the tape to the dictation tape to the admin team, they would type it up, GP would check the letter, they'd put it in the post. So like, it's not hard to look at that and see room for improvement. But the reality of it is we only really landed on Chain SMS, which is our kind of flagship. It's the most widely used product, by trying building about 20 things in practices and seeing, both what really stuck, what people really engaged with, but also what was scalable, because we built a lot of different things that had a big improvement when we pivoted, but were very tricky to scale nationally. We'd have to like go into each practice and do a lot of change management.
I mean, in terms of your current product now, like you said, what is 1 in 3 GPs using your?
Yes, it's a bit more now. It's over 40% of GP
Wow.
practices in England in the space of about 20 months without any marketing. So we didn't expect that to happen. I mean, it's definitely surprised us. It didn't happen overnight. So we've obviously seen it grow over time, which has been amazing. The nicest thing about that is there's this myth that the NHS is terrible at adopting technology, healthcare is terrible at adopting technology.
Really? Explain that. Yeah.
A lot of people talk, they see processes in hospitals being very manual, very antiquated, lots of legacy systems. Why am I still getting letters in 2019? Why can't, when I go to the hospital, they look at my GP record? Or lots and lots of it. It's not hard to find examples of technology being, significantly behind other sectors. So it's really, really nice as a team to have a big fat counterexample where we're like, hang on a sec, almost half the practices in the country in less than 2 years have started using something completely of their own accord. No one said like, you've got to use this, which is normally how tech's introduced in healthcare. Completely of their own accord. Yeah. They've set themselves up, they've started using it. And they've spread it as well. So, all our growth has been through referrals and people sharing the product with others. So so that's really rewarding for the team.
I mean, you went through a lot of iterations. I mean, you did a massive pivot previously. So, I mean, could you talk us through that journey and kind of how you've kind of reached kind of product market fit really? I mean, what core components did you guys really focus on? Yeah,
it was a long journey. So the first 18 months of the company, we were completely focused on antibiotic prescribing. So that was from EF, right? Yeah. That's what we started. When Lawrence and I met there in April 2016, that's what we started on, and we pivoted in October 2017. And the reason we pivoted is there were two main things. One is we were just struggling to get usage up. So we'd demo our software, we'd show it to people, especially. What tended to happen is the people we would get time with were the people who really cared about antibiotic prescribing. That's why they gave us their time in the first place. So that we were a bit kind of biased by that in hindsight. But people got it. They were like, yeah, it looks great, really slick. Even when I look at it now, it's like, wow, that was really slick software. But people just didn't use it. It wasn't routine enough. It wasn't what's like a painkiller. It was like a vitamin, like something people are like meant to use rather than something that has immediate benefit. So that was one problem, and we had these like weekly usage meetings that were really depressing, and we'd look at the numbers, and if we got 10 uses in a day, that was a really good day. We were like, what can we do to increase usage? And we tried everything. We like printed stickers for them to put on the corners of their screen, and we put loads of stuff in the product to like pop up, all sorts. I couldn't get it up. The second big driver for pivoting was spending more time with the commissioners in healthcare who would ultimately be our customers. And after just going to lots of those meetings, having a long hard thinking, going, even if we built the perfect product that halved inappropriate antibiotic prescribing, would they pay for it? Probably not. So we need to move on. And what we did initially, we didn't pivot straight onto chain SMS or onto communication. We went. There was this podcast, a really good podcast, with Brian Chesky from Airbnb on being really unscalable at the start to work out what you need to build. So we got the whole team to listen to that. And we spent 4 months in one GP practice, almost living there, like 3 days a week we were there. It was absolutely exhausting. They were in Oxford. We'd drive there. We'd try and get there for 8:30 when the practice opened. So you could be in for that phone rush at the beginning of the day. And our goal was, can we make 2 practices dependent on us in 4 months? Nothing scalable. Let's just like build stuff there. Like I'd come from like kind of quite operational consulting before, so almost like trying to run one of those projects, but in a GP practice. Turns out 2 practices was way too many, and actually just focusing on one let us do a lot more. And we did loads. We changed how they collect data from patients, how they manage knowledge there, how they rota their staff, how they manage training. We slashed the waiting time for appointments from 2 weeks to 2 days, just overnight, without adding any extra capacity. We were working a lot on moving workload from GPs to other staff. And one of the things we tested was this messaging product, and taking that bit of our antibiotic prescribing product and making that more broadly usable. Of all those different things we tried, some of them worked, some of them didn't work, some of them kind of worked. The only one that was really scalable, that we thought was really scalable, was the patient messaging. So we developed this, this belief, or we identified this challenge that healthcare is really bad at scaling innovation, and tried to look into why. And when you look at it, it's like, at the time we were going physically to every practice to demo the software. Then we would go back to install it. Then we'd go back to install it on the computers we couldn't get to the first time. Then maybe we'd go back to nudge them to use it. If Dropbox had to come to every customer and demo it, they wouldn't exist as a company.
Yeah.
So our view is very much field sales kills innovation in healthcare. We have to build something self-service. Quite a few people told us it was impossible because nobody had built anything self-service in healthcare. By self-service, I mean go to our website, create an account, set things up yourself, and just start using it any time of day. So we had to find something scalable where that was feasible, and we did this experiment beginning of 2018 where we were like, okay, people like the patient messaging, and the handful of practices we've tried it in. Can we make a version of this that people set them up themselves? Yeah. So we started out doing it remotely, where we'd use TeamViewer and we'd make it look like it was automated. You'd sign up to our website and we'd send you. So initially we just did it on TeamViewer and we'd over email arrange and then install remotely. Then we did a process where we had a sign up form on our website, and we'd quickly make a web page for the practice in Wix to look like it was automated, and then send them a link being like, here's your setup page, with the download link and their API license key and things like that. And, materials to print out for the team. So did that. That worked, and we basically just then kept trying to automate bits of the process, and spent most of 2018 just focused on making that as seamless as possible. So if somebody hits our website, how can we make sure that within 5 minutes they're messaging their patients? And I mean, someone hits our website for the first time ever, they don't have an account, nothing. They've got to download our software, install it, integrate it with their medical record, and all of those things, months of work went into each of them. Even just downloading software sounds simple, but when some practices have terrible internet speeds, there was a point where we nearly sent out CD-ROMs in the post because practices just couldn't download our software. So that was a lot of 2018, and then summer 2018 we had all these different problems, and I make it sound like we realized, okay, we need to focus on this, and then just focused on it. The reality is we were trying to do 10 things at once, and in the summer we were like, hang on, loads of these problems, their root cause is communication. And furthermore, that's when we clocked and we were like, actually, we think most of what healthcare is today is communication. And if you can communicate easily, you can give really good care. And if you can't, it's really hard to give good care. So we got rid of everything we were working on or considering that wasn't about communication, just focused on communication. And that's when we started to think beyond the GP practice. So until that point, we were very focused on primary care and GP practices. We started to go, hang on, loads of the communication with GP practices with the hospital team or with the district nurse or with the care home or with the pharmacy, that's over fax or through the post or, phone tennis where you call the switchboard for the hospital, try and get someone you can't, and then they call reception, things like that. So that's when we really focused on communication. And so basically since then, since summer 2018, we've been trying to move forward at the same time, improving our core GP product for messaging patients, and then building out those next kind of layers of communication within teams, between teams, things like that.
Yeah. You touched on something that was quite profound in terms of getting when you talked about usage and adoption. So getting the GP to go onto the website and being able to get set up within 2 minutes. Would you be able to go over that again? Because that must be a massive part of reaching product market fit and also increasing the adoption of the product, right?
Yeah. So I think it's Intercom that talk about this quite a lot and talk about it really well. It's if you're going to focus on any part of the product, focus on the onboarding and sign up experience, because that's the thing that everyone sees. It's the first thing they see. And you can go and add this feature that everyone's nagging you to add, but if people can't sign up, they're never going to see that feature. Now, partly we were a bit lucky in that because the core product was so simple, as in, well, simple for a user. There's a lot going on in the background, but for a user, it's so simple in terms of, I've got the patient open on my medical record system, I click a button, I type a message, I hit send, it goes as an SMS. Because that was so simple, we didn't have loads and loads of, we didn't have to find the perfect workflow or product market fit there. We could actually really focus our time on the onboarding. So a really crucial thing for us was the time to value being tiny. So we talk about, like, when's the first moment of joy someone experiences? For us, the first moment of joy is when they've set us up, they've opened a dummy patient in their medical record system, and they've clicked our button, sent a message, they've changed the mobile number to their own personal mobile phone, typed the message, and they hit send. The moment of joy is when it lands on their phone and their phone goes bing, and they've got a message they just typed on their screen on the phone. So we're like, how can we make it as quick as possible for that to happen? The second moment of joy is when they then see it go in the medical record as well. People really like that. So that's what a lot of our time was spent doing, is how can we make sure that, whether that user's got admin privileges on their computer or not, whether they've got the latest version of .NET, the .NET framework on their computer or not, whether they've, what internet speed they've got, any of these things that they can try us out. That was really, really crucial to adoption. And it fitted quite well with, how we ultimately grew, which was referrals. So we tried, to grow, we tried a lot of things. We tried Google Ads, we tried Facebook ads, we tried cold calling practices, we tried cold emailing, we tried going to events, we tried advertising in publications, we tried co-promoting with EMIS, the main medical record system. The only thing that worked at all in getting some initial users was sending letters in the post with a handwritten post-it note on saying, try this out. Where we just sent a letter by itself, no conversion. Where we sent it with a post-it note on, got like 3% conversion.
Did you guys do that?
Yeah, we were just like, Lorna in our team was amazing. She would like go home, put on a Netflix box set and just like scram through post-it notes. Some Friday afternoons as a team would like have, a bit of a competition. Everyone would get a stack and who could get through them the fastest. We did, initially 100 letters like that, then we did another 100, then I think we did 200. Conversion wasn't big, it was like 3%, but what it got us is these like individual practices around the country. 99% of our growth then came from referrals. So initially it just happened like incredibly organically. People would just, start, sign up and would say, oh, how did you hear about us? And they'd say, oh, this other GP told me. Or we'd get, a big moment for us was when we were in about 25 practices. We had this user come on our chat and ask us loads of questions. We thought, oh, they're never going to install. They've got, they're so skeptical. Anyway, we were like, just try it out. They tried it out. Later that day, they set up for the whole practice. The next day, they emailed 30 practices in the area, CC'd us being like, you've got to try this out. So and at the point in time, we were in like 25 practices. They've just emailed 30. So we were like, okay, I think referrals is going to be pretty key here.
Yeah.
And nothing beats someone you know and trust saying, I use this, you should too. Like no amount of like advertising spend or anything like that. So that was really, really crucial to our adoption.
I find it really fascinating, like time to value. I've never heard it put so succinctly, but like a lot of like the top consumer apps and a lot of businesses actually do that, with, whether it's these mainstream social platforms. I remember listening to Shamath Palihapitiya where he says, because he was a VP of user growth for Facebook, and he said the whole objective for this app was to get everyone 7 friends and to create a viral loop of joy. Yeah. And get it as quick as possible. And like you're the first person I've kind of heard like time to value metric and trying to squeeze that as fast as possible.
And that's never done in healthcare. So in healthcare, typically the time to value is like 12 months. It's like from the first meeting to staff on the front line using it, assuming there's even a moment of joy. You talk to lots of doctors, I don't think they've got many moments of joy about the software. It's more like moments of frustration. But like time to value is like of the order of months/years. So if you can do it with minutes, The other part that really accelerated adoption was avoiding the consensus decision, we call it. So
interesting.
Something where you've got to get 5 people or 10 people or even just 2 people in a room at the same time to agree on using something, and everyone needs to say yes, but one person can say no and veto everything. And that's just like toxic, because how on earth are you going to get all these people on board and excited but they haven't even tried it out or experienced it? So you've got to get people to experience the value before any sort of consensus decision. And that's where, being self-service, really focusing on individual users being able to sign up, try us out, was really, really crucial. Because otherwise it's, we'll put it in this meeting in 3 months' time, and then the agenda's going to be rushed, and then they discuss it, and there's loads of questions that come out, and people are very, very driven by risk in healthcare, not by opportunity.
Interesting.
And you've got to take account of risk. We spend a lot of time thinking about what the risk, but you've also got to think about opportunity and the opportunity cost of not doing something. And that's partly our challenge, is how do we make people see the opportunity of like what they can do with easy communication.
What are your tips for entrepreneurs trying to sell into the healthcare system and kind of finding innovative ways of trying to get customers and get customer attention?
Yeah.
I mean, you talked about initially when you tried to you talked about time versus value metric. I mean, have you got anything else in terms of speeding up that process?
So one huge thing we've done is, at the moment, our software is completely free. We plan on it always being free to GP practices. There are other customers in the health system who are much more used to paying for software, but that partly removes the consensus decision, because however much you're going to spend, whether it's thousands or whether it's 20 quid, like people will, it goes around in loops of meetings around the issue. We spend that money. So that helped speed things up. Eliminating, massively reducing time to value is really key. And really, really focusing on end users. So the great thing about going for bottom-up adoption, which is what we've done, exactly like something like Dropbox has done. Don't go to the head of IT and get them to buy it for the whole org. Get the end user to share files. Firstly, it's just faster and more fun because you spend your time building products instead of spending your time going to meetings. But secondly, if you're focusing on end users, you're not building the checkboxes that like the procurement team thinks people need. You're actually building features that people find useful. And that is, I think, where most healthcare software has fallen down, is if you look at it, it's super configurable, has loads of these features that people don't want, loads of stuff they actually need isn't in there. And it's because those companies haven't built for their end users. They've built for procurement teams and winning tenders and things like that. So for us, getting really high adoption has been all about spending loads of time with end users. So I spoke about when we pivoted, we basically lived in a practice for months, and everyone in the team spent time there. Software developers, everyone, in appointments, shadowing the phones on receptions, like everything. Everyone in our team visits a practice at least once a quarter. Some people, multiple times a week, it depends on their role, but everyone at least once a quarter. All our team offsites we do in GP practices, so spending time there. Everyone on our team does half a day every month on support with our users. So there's something about really spending as much time as possible building empathy with your users. We've got in the corner of our office over there, we've got a GP desk, which like looks and feels like a GP practice. So when we test software, it's on, a small screen with a slow computer and an uncomfortable chair. But that's how people use our software. They don't use it on like 2 big wide screens with a really fast computer and a comfortable chair. So building empathy and really building for those end users has been really crucial as well.
That's interesting. You said that not enough innovation is kind of tailored to the end user in the healthcare space. Have you seen that? So, and you kind of alluded to it, like a lot of the software products and packages are kind of tailored for the procurement team and people quite high up instead of the end user. That's really interesting. I never really thought of that. In terms of being agile in the healthcare space, and it's something that you wanted to talk on previously. I mean, how important is it to be agile? And would you be able to kind of elaborate on that?
Yeah, definitely. So I think if you're building any software product and you're not building it in an agile way, whatever your definition of agile, and people can get really academic about it, but if you're not, ultimately optimizing for learning as fast as possible and for shipping product rather than making PowerPoint decks or having loads of meetings and discussions. Like, it's going to be really hard to build, transformative, like world-changing products. That's pretty well understood in the software world. Where it gets really hard is doing that in healthcare, and lots of people are like, oh, you can't build an agile way in healthcare because lives are at stake, and they are, and because you're handling really sensitive data and all these different factors. So a lot of our learnings over the past few years have been, how can we get to the point where we can build an agile way in healthcare? So first part of that is do the basics right. Like, if you do security and data governance and clinical safety right, and you get the foundations right, it lets you build so much faster, because we know we can store patient data on our cloud servers, and we don't have to go through loops of, we can't build a prototype because we can't store data here. It's like, we've got the basics right, we've got all the right data processing agreements with practices, we've been all through the right assurances with different parts of NHS Digital, things like that. So that gives us really great foundations. Second thing that's really helped us is having this amazing user base / fan base of people we can really quickly learn from. So if I've got a question about, how do we build that feature, I put it in our user Facebook group, and within an hour, 20 or 30 people have responded with their opinion, and some of them are happy to have a phone call, and we can really quickly learn. We build prototypes and do remote testing over Zoom, where we'll get people to click through the prototype, and we'll put it up on the big screen and watch how they use it. So we didn't have that at the beginning. We had 1 or 2 practices, but we spent a lot of time there. Now we've got hundreds of practices who engage with testing. So that's really key to being agile. And then another thing we've done that's let us be quite agile is we haven't tried to displace any of their existing systems. Everything we've done has either been orthogonal or augmented it. So we haven't tried to replace their clinical record system. We've just focused on communication. And that means we can put a really small increment out, because practices aren't saying, oh, well, it needs to do these 200 things that something else does before I'll even think about using it. Because at the moment they've got nothing. And there's a lot of stuff in healthcare where there's just complete greenfield. And as a company, one of our principles is that we're not interested in building 10% better versions of things they've already got, or 20% or 30% better versions of things they've already got. We want to build the stuff they don't have. And it's something that people in the team will call out if we're talking about a feature, and we're like, actually, no, this company does that. We waste of time. Let's go and build this stuff that nobody's working on. But that lets you be more agile in terms of shipping something fast that isn't feature complete, but that people can use and get value from, because you're not having to compete with some incumbent and product. So I'd say those are some of the things we found. Get the basics right, have a really good user base for testing, and then sit orthogonal to their existing systems.
That's incredible. I want to talk about business so far now. So you started out with the EF process. How was it? I've spoken to quite a few founders, and they said they talked about how quick they got into teams, how quick they didn't. Some of it was love at first sight, some of it wasn't. How was it with you and Lawrence?
It was pretty close to love at first sight.
Was it?
Set the scene. EF is a bit like an awkward teenage disco where you're working with someone, but actually you're really interested in what someone else is doing. Do you want to work with them, but you don't want to tell this person? There's a lot of that. Lawrence was the first person I worked with. He'd been working with someone else for just a couple of days, I think, but was really excited about the healthcare space. He'd come from the oil and gas industry before, really wanted to do something with impact. And EF's very good at saying, just get into teams, start building stuff. If you're happy and you're productive, keep going. If you're not happy or you're not productive, stop and find another team. And I think both of us went on really to find a co-founder. That the main value. There's loads of other stuff that comes from being on EF, but the biggest thing for us was finding a co-founder who really cared about having a big impact in the healthcare space. So yeah, for that I'd really recommend it. We had a really great experience. We came out of that September 2016. Our first hire, Ben, Lawrence had worked with previously. We they'd spent months discussing the problem, and like Ben would help us solve things on weekends and stuff, so it was really keen, and we were like, oh, we should probably make an offer. And then Ben was like, I've handed in my notice, so I was like, okay, we should definitely make him an offer to join the team. But Ben's been fantastic. Then we kind of started growing the team from there, raised our first, we actually got a grant first in late 2016, we were awarded it, kicked off early 2017.
What was that? Innovate?
From Innovate UK, yeah. So we've had 2 Innovate UK grants, which are fantastic in terms of a lot of investors, especially early stage investors, don't want to touch healthcare because it's like government customer and it's a highly regulated space, and it's really hard to fundraise in healthcare. I found. I think it has got easier, but we found it really challenging. So Innovate UK grants have been fantastic for that in terms of helping us get to the point where we've de-risked a lot of things, and actually we can go to investors with like, look, we've got some serious traction here. So did that, got our first kind of angel money beginning of 2017. We were still doing antibiotic prescribing at the time, kept building out there. I think our investors then, they were all individuals except EF, and they were really investing in the team. They, I don't think any of them were so obsessed with the idea or even the problem. It was very much, they thought they got our energy, that we really wanted to build something in healthcare. And yeah, luckily with having 2 grants, actually we were able to pivot and then still keep going as a business for essentially 18 months until we got the Series A money in.
That's incredible. I mean, in hindsight, what kind of, looking back now, what kind of constitute to like a really successful pivot? Because obviously you were, you talked about the process of literally living in the GP. Are there specific components or traits that enabled you to really successfully pivot? Because pivots a lot of the time just don't go well.
It's a really interesting question, what made that work. So I think we had an incredibly loyal team who really, we enjoyed working together. We were definitely productive together. We were, moving fast. Now we might be moving in the wrong direction, but we could build products and we could move fast together, and people enjoyed that. And a lot of the things I've spoken about, post pivot came from before. So spending a load of time with users, trying to ship things fast, building for user needs, not building for tick boxes, getting the basics right around things like security and clinical safety, all of that we were doing pre-pivot. A lot of our technology, our technology today, obviously there's a lot more than then, but when we started growing Chain SMS and building that out, a lot of that technology had come from what we built pre-pivot in terms of integrations with the record systems, how we deployed, installed software, things like that, how we updated it. I think what helps, but we could have been even better at, is not a kind of half pivot where we're going to look at these other things. It was very clear to the team. It was like, this thing has no future. This is what we need to be working on. Now, I think we could have been more extreme. Well, we definitely could have, looking back. We kept that product going because we didn't want to disappoint the people who did occasionally use it. Maybe that was the right thing to do. There's always a concern we had was if we turned things off, people would be less willing to try things in the future because they're like, oh, this is just going to be turned off. And then I think what made it quite successful is we went into the pivot quite open-minded. The experience of having had such strong conviction about a problem and a solution, and then actually realizing we were wrong, really, really humbles you and really makes you go, well, actually, everything is assumptions until we've proven otherwise, and we need to really just optimize for learnings. That helps a lot. But I distinctly remember kind of worrying about how we're going to present this pivot to the team, and essentially say to them, the work you've been doing over the last year, depending on when people joined, we're not continuing. We're essentially commenting out that code, and we deleted all the, not just the technical work, we built clinical pathways, all this stuff we're not continuing, and people had worked really hard, worked late nights, everything to get that done. People completely got it. They were like, instantly saw why it's the right thing to do. Instantly like, okay, what do we move on to next? So I think, you know, having that trust and that buy-in in the team really helped, that people were like, okay, even if we're changing all of that, I still want to be here. I still want to be, working on these problems together.
That's incredible. In terms of you guys as a company, I mean, you know, you mentioned you wanted to talk about culture and diversity. I mean, could you touch on, you know, your culture here at AccuRx, and kind of, you know, your thoughts on diversity and how you foster it?
Yeah. So on culture first, I think culture very much just comes out of like what you do. You can, it's very hard to say like, you know, that's the culture we want and then like go and make it. I don't think it works like that. So, you know, in our early days, our culture came from the four of us in an office. Once a week, we'd be like, oh, should we all go, you know, grab lunch together at one of the, you know, curry houses in Euston or something like that. So that was our culture. And then we still do weekly team lunch. We have a lot of culture around doing things as a team, say spending a lot of time with users. That was, you know, always been a strong part of our culture. So when someone joins, we make sure in their first couple of weeks they're out in a GP practice, you know, meeting users, talking to users. So I think what you do when you're small, it's a lot easier to introduce things when you're small. You try and introduce something when you're big, and I think it's really hard. So a lot of our time now is spent going, well, what are the things we actually want to be doing when we're 100 people, 200 people? Do we need to be introducing them now? We made our team meals pescatarian because we're like, if we do it now, people will get it. If we try and do it when you're 100 people, people will be like, where's my meat? We started doing town hall on Friday afternoons to update everyone, you know, hear things going on. We were like, when we started, there were 10 people. We're kind of like, what's the point? We all sit around a table. But we're like, it's going to be hard to introduce when we're 50 people, so let's start doing it. Funnily enough, we did the first one and everyone was like, this is amazing. I didn't know all this stuff was going on. And you just kind of assume all this stuff's being communicated. A lot of it, I think, we try and not, if we're going to do something and commit to something, really do it. So I think like one-to-ones are a good example, right? We do weekly one-to-ones. We'll do everything possible to, definitely not to cancel them. We might, you know, reschedule and things like that, but people have their one-to-ones every week. It sets the expectation with line managers. They should be doing one-to-ones every week. It's really easy for a company to say our part of our culture is, you know, we support our team and we care about their development, we loads of feedback and stuff like that. But if people don't turn up for one-to-ones or, you know, keep rescheduling them, it doesn't, you know, that's not your culture. It's what you want your culture to be.
It's amazing because you guys started you were very conscious of it at the beginning.
I think a lot of it came from like, what's the sort of company we want to build. We'd both had experiences in previous companies where we'd been unhappy, we'd felt either unsupported or like there wasn't enough transparency or like decisions were just being made above our head and being passed down, and that's not what we wanted to build. And you know what, probably the thing that keeps us up at most at night, Lawrence and I, isn't are we building the right product or something like that, have we made the right hire, it's are we going to get to that point where we're a size where people start to feel like that and we don't know about it. That's like, you know, really worrying because those are the things that are really hard to fit. So yeah, there's loads of different elements to our culture. Those team meals, once a year we go away for a week as a team, our team retreat, like a work, you know, for the week to work, but on more strategic stuff. But then for the weekend, we invite people's partners and kids. Again, because the first time we did it, we were like, oh, why don't we invite people's partners? And if you try and introduce that later when you're a big team, it's, you know, this big expense and logistical complexity. We do 360 feedback twice a year. We do it in quite a different way where everyone shares theirs. Lawrence and I go first.
Interesting.
We don't see everyone's feedback that they give each other. It's only the person who receives it sees it, because if someone's giving feedback to someone else in the team, I don't want them worrying about, oh, is Jacob going to read it and think something? I want them to be as open as possible. That's much more important.
Okay.
We, you know, put quite a lot of effort into onboarding people and having plans, you know, really tight plan for the first 3 months. We've got personal development plans. We're working on progression frameworks. Loads of stuff. We go for dinner once a month as a team. Well, actually, every other month we make dinner together as a team, but then every other month we go out for dinner as a team. So yeah, like, huge variety of stuff in our culture.
It's more of a habit, right?
Yeah, I think that's a really good way of describing it. People are used to these things, they come along, that's how it works. Lawrence says this to the team often, like, the culture's out of our hands now. It's not, Lawrence and I between us are like less than 10% of the culture. It's we can try and nudge it along in the right direction, but it's very much set by the team, by the behaviours, by things they do when people join the team, and that's the way it should be, right? We would really want people to take initiatives and do crazy things we haven't even thought of. Things I love. We were talking about it on the way in, like when we moved into the office, everyone drilled into the concrete walls to put TVs up and put in the networking, and like we built our furniture and stuff like that to make it our own space and things like that.
Making curries together, I saw that.
Cooking together. I mean, even just having our own office space. We had that when there were three of us in this like terrible office, but we had our own space and we could put things on the walls and shout, and it's your own space. Whereas I think co-working spaces can be really toxic for building a culture, because you just inherit the culture of the co-working space. And it's probably something that it's really easy to gloss over at the early stages and just be like, no, we just need to focus on product, we just need to focus on revenue or something like that. But I think in terms of like sustainability, long term, keeping people here, attracting really great people, and ultimately coming to work every day and enjoying it, like I think you've got to make a very conscious effort to on these things. Every Sunday night I'm like trying to think through my head, I'm like, do I think people are looking forward to the week ahead, or are they like dreading it and like wish the weekend was like another few days?
Do you guys focus on that employee experience?
Yes, we've never actually called it that. We do some like employee engagement surveys. We do a lot of things to get feedback from the teams. We do retrospectives. People can ask questions in town hall or send in anonymous questions to town hall. We try and make sure part of having weekly one-to-ones means that, and getting all line managers to ask about not just what people are working on, but are they happy, means that things can filter up very quickly, and it should be no longer than a week that if somebody's unhappy about something, it can filter up. So that's really key as well.
Amazing. In terms of where you're going now as a company, in a realistic fairy tale world, from a product standpoint, in 18 months and 5 years' time, where do you hope AccuRx is? In them two timeframes.
So, in a 5 year time frame, it's very much that vision that anyone involved in a patient's care can communicate with anyone else involved in that patient's care, that the patient's part of that, a very active part of that. That we become, ubiquitous across the health system, and actually just the easiest way for people to communicate, and we start doing that in other healthcare systems around the world, and that actually the record of communication around a patient starts to replace the traditional medical record, which is basically what used to be on paper on the screen. In 18 months, much more focused on essentially building out communication between the GP practice and other providers like hospitals, building out the communication between GP practice and patients, so making it much more two-way, much more synchronous, communication between other providers and the patient. So, we've got all these diagrams of having all these different stakeholders and trying to join them up. And where we really want to get to in 18 months is that anyone who's an NHS member of staff can look up a patient, see who else is looking after that patient, and message any of them. That's where we really want to get to. In terms of, the 5 year goal is hard, because actually, if you want to be truly agile, you don't know. We could come up with a bit of a guess. We've got a vision. We've got to have some direction for the team. That's actually been one of the challenges, especially after the pivot, is how do we balance like having a really clear direction with like staying really agile. But I'd say we're learning more, not every week, every day, in terms of what we build and trying to optimize for that.
Are there regulatory changes that would really help AccuRx and you'd really be excited to see?
It's a really good question. I'd say the main things that would help move us forward faster are around making it easier for end users to adopt us bottom up. So it's basically around data governance and who's a data controller. So GP practices can just start using us because the GP partner is the data controller. They're also the user, so they can agree to things. Doesn't work like that in a hospital, where like a junior doctor there who might want to use us isn't the data controller for the hospital. They can't agree to use the system in a certain way and store data in it. So in an ideal world for us, that data processing agreement would be held centrally in the NHS, and that means we could just move a hell of a lot faster. We used to, have these meetings and be like, oh, can you, it'd be great if you could mandate this or make this happen. We've actually gone the other way and are quite against that, because where we've seen that happen in the healthcare space, things be mandated, it basically makes you lazy, because you don't have to build a really great user experience because people use you because they have to. We want to be in the space where people use us because they want to. And that's the nicest bit of user feedback we get quite a lot, is the one bit of software we don't have to use, but we use, and actually the favourite bit of software we use, all this other stuff we have to use and we hate. So we're not keen on stuff being mandated centrally, but certainly making it easier to get things adopted bottom up would be nice. I don't think it's a blocker. All of these things are, building a company in healthcare is super challenging, but the challenges are also why these problems haven't been solved so far. If it was easy, it would have been done by many people.
Okay, amazing. Is there anything specific that you would like to talk about before we go into a quick fire round?
I guess I missed your question about diversity. I spoke about culture a bit. You asked about diversity. So it's the reason we think having a diverse team is really important isn't because it's 2019 and we should be diversity is important or anything like that. It's because we're building for one of the most diverse user bases in terms of healthcare staff, so that they can serve an even more diverse user base of patients, which literally is the definition of diverse, right? It's the whole population, and it's generally skewed towards more vulnerable people anyway, with health problems, with frailty, with mental health problems, all sorts of things like that. And furthermore, when you look at the numbers, and these numbers are from the US, but 70% of the healthcare workforce is made up of women, 75% of decision making in healthcare is done by women. So I've narrowed diversity down to gender, and obviously there's lots of different key types, but even just focusing on gender diversity, if we don't have that in our team, we're not going to build good products. We're just going to build products that the demographic here like to use. A lot of our users type like this, and they can't find their downloads folder, and they don't open the browser when they come into work, and we've got to have a wider team that's really good at building empathy, and so we put a lot of effort into that over the past year. It's been a lot of work, but has really, really paid dividends. So in October last year, there was one woman in the team, and there were 7 of us. We're just below 50-50 in the team in terms of gender now. And that took a load of, putting every ad through a gender decoder, putting our culture deck public online, putting our employee handbook public online, lowering the requirements on jobs when they're advertised to make sure we get more applications in, but then, still having high requirements when we're screening and interviewing.
Interesting. Making
sure that no candidate comes in and just meets men during their interviews, and they've got a good balance. Making sure that every candidate comes in twice. If they have a not so good day, we've seen them on a different day.
That's really interesting. I've never really considered these nuances before.
Yeah, I don't know which of them have worked and which of them, they all feel like kind of semi-sensible things to do. But we've definitely seen a big shift over the past year, and it's created a really great team dynamic. I think the next challenge is making sure that we haven't just done that in terms of the makeup of the team, but we've done that in terms of spread across different roles. So, senior roles, there's also good diversity. Making different teams, so development team, there's good diversity. Equity and pay across different, not just gender diversity, but all sorts of different types of diversity. Getting to the point where attrition is comparable, and staff employee engagement and satisfaction is comparable, and progression and development is comparable. That's the next. We're just at baby steps at the beginning of making sure we've even got a diverse team in the door, but there's so much more work to do.
Before we jump on the quick fire round, is there anything specific you want to kind of notify anyone of? New product releases, new job vacancies?
Oh, good question. Start of 2020, we've got quite a few exciting jobs out. So we're looking for a really great security engineer. We're looking for user researchers. Even looking for a really brilliant office manager to run our space, this lovely office.
Okay.
Looking for designers. Lots of roles in the pipeline. They're all on our website. And we're also now at the point where 95% of GP practices can use us. So we've integrated with
Amazing.
the systems in 95% of practices. We're in about 40. What that means essentially is if your GP practice is still sending you letters, or you want them to message you, but they're calling up and everything, ask if they use us. And if not, it's free for them to sign up.
Amazing. Quick fire round. Most valuable purchase under £100.
My rucksack, it's like this Osprey cycling rucksack that has a really good padded laptop section, and it stands up and it's waterproof. It's amazing.
A book you would gift to a fellow startup founder?
Culture Code. Definitely
Culture Code.
Yeah. It's brilliant. It's like these 3 characteristics of high performing teams: building a sense of purpose, sharing vulnerability, and I'm having a mind blank. Essentially, like creating belonging in the team.
Amazing. Most valuable advice you've received?
Focus on getting our product into the hands of users, not on revenue.
Amazing. Most valuable failure that in hindsight set you up for success?
Definitely spending 18 months building antibiotic decision support before we pivoted.
Yeah, amazing. And what gives you the most joy as a founder doing what you do?
2 things: seeing people progress, so seeing people come in and just doing things we'd never even imagined they could do, learning new skills, coming up with ideas that we definitely would have had. Second thing, feedback from our users, getting users get in touch saying like, you saved my life, I was depressed at work, looking at leaving the health service, and like now I've using this software, I've got so much time back in my day, I love my job. That's not a lot beats that, and getting it in quite high volumes is also like incredibly rewarding.
Favorite junk food?
I'm not a very junk foody person. Is dark chocolate a junk food? I do love like really dark, like 85%.
Wow. And favorite beverage?
Favorite beverage? I just get through vast amounts of lime cordial and sparkling water. But if I have to relax, then it would be gin and tonic.
Gin and tonic. Amazing. Thank you so much for being on our show. This has been
no worries,
amazing.
I really enjoyed
Thank
it.
you.
Thanks a lot for coming over, you too.